This is Showcase, Faculty Exhibition 8 at the Jule Museum. Here's George Fairs talking about the process behind his work.
The idea behind the stool came from, I was standing once next to, I was in Austin, Texas, and I was waiting for the bus, and I saw moss growing on a branch of a tree that is on the ground. And I was really fascinated by it because I didn't know it's a moss. I thought it's some sort of weird bark or something. But I realized it's really grabbing onto it in an interesting way where it maintained the identity of the branch or a piece of wood that was on the ground. But I still recognize it as a branch. I knew it's a tree. I knew everything. But then, it didn't change the identity. It's still on it, but it's still a branch and so on. So that is the one part that started the idea of, I'm looking at that branch, I'm looking at that tree, and I'm recognizing it as a tree, but in an identity, it's not really that branch or the tree that it was, because now it has moss on it, it's on the ground, and so on. So I was working on an idea that allows me to understand what can I maybe like put on or cover any item or an item in general and maintain its identity, but we're really not looking at it anymore. I chose as a starter point, before I chose a piece, actually, I was working more on what can go on the item. So it was mainly a lot of prototyping, a lot of work on the hair particles on top. It was nothing like that at first steps. It was more like individual pieces of bristles. I used to cut them by hand, put them on there. I tested the light on it because I actually wanted an identity of light. I knew with physics that the light bouncing off an object, it has to reflect back into our eyes for us to see it. If the light is not bouncing back off an object, we can't see it. So I thought about that. I thought about the angle. I thought about the fact that if I'm looking at a table, the fact that the table exists in front of me is because the light is bouncing back off it in my eye. So I wanted to work on something that really can amplify that reflection and refraction. So I thought about something that is reflective, translucent also, play with light and so on. So I was working on these bristles first just to kind of give the light an identity. Like I want light to exist first, but I did not want something that has colors. I did not want something that is made out of actual materials that is opaque and so on. I actually wanted transparency because I wanted to respect whatever is behind it in a way. And I started working on different places or ways I can install those pieces. The size, is it going to go on a wall? Is it something that is movable that can be like a curtain? Is it, something that I can wear? I was testing it on my shoulder, on my arm, and so on. And I thought that's all of these are giving me completely different projects in my head, But anyway, and then after a lot of prototyping, a lot of work, I ended up with the idea of starting with a chair. And the idea of the chair is because in all the world, we all know what a chair is. It's a thing you sit on. It can look completely different. A couch is different, but if you go into museums or back in history, there was always a chair. It could be a block of stone on the ground and still a chair. So we all have that one main concept of a seating that is a chair. So I wanted that. I wanted people to always look at it and see a chair. And I wanted to do my best. And no matter how much I alter it, it will always be a chair. So I wanted something also hard, in a way to manipulate the identity. So I started with that chair and I picked up a stool. And I started working on those 3D printed surface that can amplify the curvature of the stool. And I also wanted the bristle to kind of spread. And I created this kind of like a dome, and I started doing a little bit of parametrics in it to create different cubes that are kind of poking out from inside that dome, and then manually started, I did a lot of laser cutting of those pieces of hair after a lot of studies of the length and the types and what type of material, because I ended up at the end with Mylar as a material, that I was using Mylar because it was very non-toxic and safe to laser cut, so it was pretty nice to use with heat. And it was easy to cut through, and it was clean. It was not giving me any, like when I touch it, it's not changing the colors. It was not getting dirty. Even with the smoke coming from the laser cutting, it was not ruining it. And then folding it, gluing it on it, and then that's how I ended up with a piece. But the idea at the end is when you put that chair, the stool, is you look at it and say that's a stool, but it's really not a stool. even though you look at it as tool, we all look at it and say it's a type of chair, but it completely lost its identity. You cannot sit on it. So is it really a stool if I cannot sit on it? Am I seeing the same stool? Every piece of those hair is bouncing back unlimited and infinite numbers of options of light coming into your eye that's changing every second. So even though I'm looking at the same stool, every split second you're not seeing the same stool because the identity of light bouncing off into your eye is completely different. And that kind of excited me too, is that we're experiencing the stool differently every time we see it. Even during the day, or the amount of people around it and the motion and so on that can activate those bristles is giving me a brand new stool every single time.